The sound of the wind that morning felt different. It wasn't just the usual rustling of leaves in the backyard. It was more like an ancient whisper, as if time itself were trying to tell me something. I opened my eyes slowly, still lying in bed, staring at the ceiling like someone waiting for an answer that never comes. 71 years old. Today. My name, Evelyn Grace Thompson, was scribbled in the corner of the calendar hanging in the kitchen, written in a fading blue pen. I was the one who wrote it 2 months ago. Just so no one forgets, I had thought at the time. But no one saw it. And maybe no one will today either. I got up without rush. My bones no longer had the lightness they once did. Every step toward the kitchen felt like a silent conversation with the past. The kettle whistled. Coffee filled the air with that familiar smell that always reminded me of Sunday mornings with my family, and the curtains swayed gently in the breeze coming through the window. Everything looked just like any other day. Everything. Except my heart. I opened the cabinet under the sink, and there it was, the box of vanilla cake mix I bought last month, just in case. My daughter's favorite. I never knew if she really liked it or just said so to make me happy. Either way, it was there, untouched, just like me. As I brewed the coffee, I thought about how much bigger the house had felt since my husband passed. Away, 7 years now. His coat still hangs on the same hook by the door, untouched. It's not about clinging, it's about memory. Sometimes we hold on to what remains so we don't completely fall apart. The clock read 9:03 when I sat down. At the table, my phone was next to me, screen up. No messages, no calls, no "Good morning, Mom." That's okay, I told myself. Maybe they're still asleep. Maybe they're busy. Maybe, just maybe, they're planning a surprise. I walked to the cupboard and took out the dinnerware with the gold trim, the one I only use on special occasions. I had made up my mind. I would set the table, not for them, for me. I laid out the sunflower-patterned tablecloth, rinsed the glasses, folded the white cloth napkins I had saved for family dinners. I arranged everything with care, like someone who still believes. But deep down, there was a silence sitting with me. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that waits and knows it won't be called upon. I took a deep breath and sat back down. I stared at the cake box for a few minutes. I thought about opening it, about baking it anyway, but something in me resisted. I stood up and walked to the mirror in the living room. I looked at myself. I had aged. But there was something else. In that reflection, a woman tired of being invisible, tired of giving everything and receiving silence, tired of remembering everyone and being forgotten. And in that moment, between the scent of cooling coffee and the sunlight streaming in through the window blinds, I realized this birthday wouldn't be just another day. Not because I expected anyone to remember, but because I needed to remember myself. The day dragged on slowly, as if time itself knew I had nothing to wait for. With each passing hour, I fooled myself a little less. The phone remained silent, and the scent of coffee in the thermos had long faded. The box of cake mix still sat on the table like a quiet reminder that, once again, no one was coming. Around noon, I heard hurried footsteps in the hallway. I recognized the sound of my daughter Emily's shoes. For a moment, my heart skipped. Could it be? Maybe. Maybe she remembered. Maybe she was pretending to be surprised. Maybe there was a hug on its way. But when she walked into the kitchen, she didn't even glance at the set table. She was on the phone, laughing at something someone said on the other end. She walked right past me, grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge, and turned back around, shouting, "Be right there, babe! Just grab the water!" Then I saw my son-in-law Josh walk through the doorway with a cup of coffee and earbuds in. He glanced my way, barely, if at all. My grandson rushed in behind him, towel slung over his shoulder, shouting something about David's pool. "Where are you all headed?" I asked, trying to hide the hopeful tone in my voice. "Oh, just a little BBQ over at David's house, Mom. Nothing big, won't be long," Emily called out, already turning the car key in her hand. "We won't be late, okay? Love you." And just like that, they were gone. The gate slammed shut, the engine started, laughter echoed from the car until it disappeared around the corner. And I stood there, alone in the kitchen. Sunflower. Cloth still spread across the table, plates neatly aligned, and the cake mix still untouched. It wasn't sadness that ate away at me. It was something deeper, like I no longer belonged, as if my presence had become a detail too inconvenient for their script. I walked back down the hall, passing the calendar on the wall. May 15th. Mom was faintly written there. Of course I had written it. No one else would bother to mark my birthday. I felt a tightness in my chest. Not out of bitterness, but realization. A kind of pain that needs no explanation. It just is. Sometime after 3, I went outside to hang a small towel on the line. The heat was strong, and clothes dried quickly. As I folded the fabric, I heard laughter from the back of the house. Loud, joyful laughter, the kind you only hear on celebration days. I moved closer to the small back window and looked out. My eyes took a moment to understand. The backyard was full. Fold-out tables with colorful tablecloths, plastic cups, music blaring, meat sizzling on the grill. I saw my daughter laughing, a plate in her hand. I saw my grandson kicking a soccer ball with another boy. I saw neighbors I'd known for years. People who had eaten my potato rolls, people who had borrowed sugar from me. The barbecue was here, in my yard, at my house. I took 2 steps back, as if the ground had suddenly tilted beneath me. I stood there frozen, listening to the sounds of a party, the party just outside. The same celebration I hadn't been invited to. A gathering in a space that once was mine too. I went back inside slowly, dragging my feet. I sat at the edge of my bed and let my body sink down. What I felt wasn't anger. It was colder than that. Deeper. The realization that I was here, alive, present, trying to be seen, and still invisible. And in that moment, I understood it wasn't just about today. It was about all the other days I'd been silently forgotten. It was 4:47 p.m. when the sound of music began to blend with the smell of meat on the grill. The voices outside grew louder as the day went on. Laughter, footsteps crunching on gravel, the clink of plates. Shouts of "Goal!" from the same grandson I once taught to ride a bike. There I was, sitting on the edge of my bed, shoulders slumped, eyes too dry to cry. That's when a cruel truth settled in. I hadn't been forgotten by accident. I had been left out, by choice. My mind began to rewind memories I hadn't invited in. Birthday parties I had planned months in advance. Cakes baked in the middle of the night, napkins folded into little flowers, details no one ever noticed, but that were always there. Sleepless nights nursing fevers, whispered prayers in dark bedrooms, hugs given before they stepped out into the world. I was there, in everything. But out in that yard, at that barbecue, on this very day, I wasn't. I walked back into the kitchen. The box of cake mix still rested on the table, as if it had been waiting for me. But now it didn't symbolize a failed celebration. It had become something else, a symbol of resilience, of what I could still do for myself. I picked it up more firmly this time, but before opening it, I sat down and scribbled a sentence in my old, worn-out notebook. Today isn't about a party. It's about seeing myself, fully. With steady hands, I gathered the ingredients, took out the big mixing bowl, cracked the eggs, added the milk and oil, and stirred the batter just like I had done countless times before. But this time, it was for me. While the oven preheated, I opened the window on the far side of the house. the quiet side, the one where the wind rustles against the laundry room wall and birds nest in the ivy-covered fence. You couldn't hear loud music there or shallow conversation. There was air, there was space, there was me. As the sweet aroma of vanilla began to fill the kitchen, something settled inside me. It wasn't joy, it wasn't comfort, it was something else. A kind of wild peace, the kind you feel when you finally stop waiting for crumbs. When you wake up inside your own skin and realize you still exist, even if no one is watching. I set the table for one. A simple plate, a fork, a glass of warm milk. I lit a small candle, not a birthday candle, but an ordinary white one, the kind I used to light on stormy nights when the power went out. Tonight, it lit me. When the cake was done, I took it out of the oven and cut a slice while it was still warm. Steam rose from it like a shy hug. I sat down, took a bite, and closed. My eyes. It was soft. It was sweet. It was mine. And there, alone, but whole, I realized something deeply true. For years, I had served everyone else at the table. Today, for the first time, I served something to myself, and I fed myself courage. It was 4:47 p.m. when the sound of music began to blend with the smell of meat on the grill. The voices outside grew louder as the day went on. Laughter, footsteps crunching on gravel, the clink of plates. Shouts of "Goal!" from the same grandson I once taught to ride a bike. There I was, sitting on the edge of my bed, shoulders slumped, eyes too dry to cry. That's when a cruel truth settled in. I hadn't been forgotten by accident. I had been left out, by choice. My mind began to rewind memories I hadn't invited in. Birthday parties I had planned months in advance. Cakes baked in the middle of the night, napkins folded into little flowers, details no one ever noticed, but that were always there. Sleepless nights, nursing fevers, whispered prayers in dark bedrooms, hugs given before they stepped out into the world. I was there. In everything. But out in that yard, at that barbecue, on this very day, I wasn't. Walked back into the kitchen. The box of cake mix still rested on the table, as if it had been waiting for me. But now it didn't symbolize a failed celebration. It had become something else, a symbol of resilience, of what I could still do for myself. I picked it up more, firmly this time, but before opening it, I sat down and scribbled a sentence in my old, worn-out notebook. Today isn't about a party. It's about seeing myself, fully. With steady hands, I gathered the ingredients, took out the big mixing bowl, cracked the eggs, added the milk and oil, and stirred the batter just like I had done countless times before. But this time, it was for me. While the oven preheated, I opened the window on the far side of the house. The quiet side, the one where the wind rustles against the laundry room wall and birds nest in the ivy-covered fence. You couldn't hear loud music there or shallow conversation. There was air, there was space, there was me. As the sweet aroma of vanilla began to fill the kitchen, something settled inside me. It wasn't joy. It wasn't comfort. It was something else, a kind of wild peace, the kind you feel when you finally stop waiting for crumbs. When you wake up inside your own skin and realize you still exist, even if no one is watching. I set the table for one. A simple plate, a fork, a glass of warm milk. I lit a small candle, not a birthday candle, but an ordinary white one. The kind I used to light on stormy nights when the power went out. Tonight, it lit me. When the cake was done, I took it out of the oven and cut a slice while it was still warm. Steam rose from it like a shy hug. I sat down, took a bite, and closed my eyes. It was soft. It was sweet. It was mine. And there, alone, but whole, I realized something deeply true. For years, I had served everyone else at the table. Today, for the first time, I served something to myself, and I fed myself courage. That night, I didn't go to bed early. After the last bite of cake, I remained at the table for a long time, watching the candle flame flicker. The noise of the party outside slowly faded, like waves pulling away from shore. And when silence returned to the house, it no longer felt like an enemy. It felt like an ally. I picked up my notebook again and with steady hands wrote, "They didn't forget me. They just stopped looking, and I stopped remembering myself for far too long." The next morning, sunlight slipped through the cracks in the curtains, warming my face as I opened my eyes. I got dressed slowly, choosing a blue dress I hadn't worn in years, the one my husband used to say brought out the color in my eyes. When the day was bright, I put on a simple pair of earrings, brushed my hair, and looked at myself in the mirror, not to see the wrinkles, but to truly see me. I went into the kitchen, made a fresh pot of coffee, and sat down to write again. It felt like the words I'd been holding in for years had finally found their way out. Each line was a confession, each paragraph a recovery. Later that afternoon, Emily appeared at the door with a grocery bag in her hands and a tired look on her face. She walked through the room distracted, not noticing my posture, my clean dress, or the absence of the usual table setting. "Hey, Mom. The party was really fun yesterday, you know? I was gonna invite you, but I figured you were probably resting." I smiled, a polite smile. "I was home," I replied calmly. "You should have come out back. I didn't know I was welcome." She furrowed her brow, as if she didn't quite understand. But before she could say anything, I added, "I'm glad you all had fun. I had my own celebration too." She looked at me like I'd just said something strange. I didn't ask any questions. I didn't apologize. I didn't blame her, because in that moment, I no longer felt the need to carry the burden of teaching others how to see me. I just wanted to move forward. After she left, I went to the bedroom and pulled a suitcase from under the bed. I dusted it off carefully and began folding clothes. But this time, it wasn't for a visit or a short stay. This time, it was for a new beginning. Among the floral dresses and warm cardigans, I tucked in my notebook, because inside it lived the woman I was starting to rediscover. The woman who had served the world for decades, but who now wanted to finally serve herself. The next afternoon, I called an old friend, Margot. Life had pulled us apart, but the affection never faded. She answered with that steady voice, the kind you imagine belongs to someone who still plants flowers in her yard, even with arthritis in her hands. "Evelyn? What a lovely surprise." "Margot, do you still have space at that little cabin by the lake?" "Always. Even more so now. Why do you ask?" "Because I think it's time I went somewhere I still feel remembered." There was a pause on the other end, but it was a beautiful silence, the kind that comes after truth. "I'll be waiting with hot coffee and apple bread, just like the old days," she said. I hung up with my heart racing. For the first time in many, many years, it felt like something new was beginning, something truly mine. The next morning, the house felt smaller, not because the walls had changed, but because I had. It was as if I had grown from the inside out, and now that space, the one that used to define me, no longer fit. The suitcase was packed and waiting by the door. I took the last slice of cake, yes, it was still soft, and placed it gently into a small insulated lunch bag. It was a piece of my new beginning. I closed the windows, unplugged the appliances, took one last look around the room. Then I placed the note I had carefully written, folded neatly on the sunflower pattern tablecloth. I'm okay. I'm alive. And I'm leaving. For me. I didn't leave behind anger. I didn't leave behind resentment. I left silence, but this time it was mine. I called a car. The driver was a kind young man who helped me with my suitcase without asking questions. As I settled into the back seat, I took a deep breath. But it wasn't a breath of exhaustion. It wasn't the sigh of sadness. It was steady. It was the breath of someone who had made a decision and finally followed through. The road to Margot's cabin was long, lined with tall trees and fields that danced in the breeze. The sunlight broke through the clouds in golden rays, and for a moment, I thought how much my husband would have loved that view. I smiled, not with pain, but with gratitude. He loved me well. He left me whole. And today, even without him, I felt that again. Margot was waiting on the porch, a floral scarf tied in her hair and her hands beautifully marked by time. When she saw me, she opened her arms with a kind of affection that can't be explained, only felt. "You came," she said, hugging me like someone holding on to something the world nearly lost. I did. And this time, not just for a visit. I need to start over, Margot. I need to remember what used to make me smile, before everything. She didn't say a word, just led me inside the cabin, which smelled of cinnamon and old wood. The floor creaked beneath our feet, but the sound felt welcoming. There were flowers in a vase by the window, teacups stacked neatly in the cupboard, and an armchair that looked like it had been waiting for me for years. That night, Margot made chamomile tea, and we shared the last slice of my cake. We told the kind of stories only time can grant, stories with long pauses, teary eyes, and laughter that escapes even through pain. We talked about children, goodbyes, long silences, and the courage it takes to become yourself again. Before going to bed, I opened my notebook one more time and wrote, "It's not about running away. It's about coming home. And sometimes, home is where you're heard, even in silence." I closed my eyes with a lightness in my soul. For the first time in years, I fell asleep feeling that tomorrow just might surprise me. And as the wind blew, outside, carrying the scent of open fields and the quiet promise of new days, I understood something. It's not too late to bloom. The days at the cabin didn't just pass. They bloomed. Time no longer measured me by completed tasks or people I had pleased. Now, it was marked by the smell of fresh bread in the morning, by handwritten letters exchanged with old friends, and by quiet hours listening to the rain on the roof, without guilt, without hurry, without expectations. Margot often said I had started laughing with my whole body again. And I only realized it myself when I caught myself singing while hanging clothes on the line, something so simple, yet for so many years I had done it in silence, as if I didn't deserve to make a sound. I rediscovered the joy of getting dressed. Just for me, a soft lipstick, a scarf in my hair, tiny earrings, not out of vanity, but out of kindness. And that, I never knew before, is a form of self-love that changes everything. I filled another notebook. This time, not with sorrow, but with recipes, beautiful memories, and even dreams. Yes, dreams. At 71, I started dreaming again. One of them? To see the ocean. Something I'd never done, despite living my whole life in a country with miles and miles of coastline. Then, one sunny afternoon over coffee, Margot looked me in the eyes and said, "Evelyn, why don't you go?" "Go where?" I asked. "To wherever your heart has been asking you to." And so, 2 months later, I boarded a bus to the coast with a small backpack and that good kind of nervous flutter in my stomach. It wasn't running away. It was going toward myself. The ocean welcomed me like it had been waiting for me all along. I walked barefoot on the wet sand, sat alone on a weathered wooden bench, and I cried. But it was a clean cry, wide and light, the kind that only comes when you've waited a long time to find yourself, and you finally do. There, I met other women, widows, retirees, women who had been forgotten, left behind, or just brave enough to start over. We laughed like girls. We baked cakes in borrowed kitchens, traded books, and remembered life without heaviness. I was invited to book clubs, circle dancing classes, even a mountain getaway with a group of ladies who, like me, had once thought it was too late to begin again. And then I understood. My story hadn't ended the day they forgot my birthday. It had only just begun. In the moment, I finally remembered myself. These days, I live between comings and goings. My address has changed a few times. I've lived in 3 small towns over the past 12 months, and each one gave back something I had lost: the courage to be seen, the joy of learning, and the right to take up space in the world. I discovered that I love painting watercolor landscapes. My paintings were featured in a local fair. I received sincere compliments, and one person said, "There's something in your colors that feels like both memory and the future at once." I reconnected with my 2 brothers, with whom I had lost touch. When we met again, it was as if time had never stood between us. One sunny weekend, we hugged with our eyes closed, like people who no longer needed to say anything, only feel. I traveled to the countryside with a group of ladies, and we laughed so much it hurt. On one of those trips, I ran into an old friend from my youth, Henry, a widower too, kind, respectful, with eyes that still know how to listen. These days, he calls me almost every day. Sometimes we talk for hours. Other times, we just share the quiet together over the phone, the good kind of quiet. Emily, my daughter, reached out too. She came to visit me in one of the towns I lived in. We cried. A lot. She asked for forgiveness. So did I. We're close. Again, not like before, but like now. 2 women trying to truly see each other without judgment. On the day I turned 72, I hosted a picnic in a public park. I brought vanilla cake, orange juice, and tucked a little note into each napkin. You are here. And that alone is a reason to celebrate. 18 people came, not a single relative, just people who chose me, after 70. And that's worth more than 1,000 automatic birthday messages. Today I write to you, who made it to the end of this story. If you ever feel forgotten, left out, invisible, remember Evelyn, the woman who was forgotten in her own home, but who chose to remember herself. And through that choice, she came back to life. It's never too late to serve yourself a helping of courage. It's never too late to be your own gift. And if this story touched your heart, like it touched mine to live it, like this video, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who needs to be reminded. You are here, and that alone is a reason to celebrate.